So let's dive into the chaotic early days of the Republic of Texas. It's a story that really boils down to one thing: a bitter fight over land. And at the heart of that fight were two leaders whose completely opposite visions would either lead to peace or ignite an all-out war.
Okay, picture this. The Texas Revolution is over. A brand new nation is trying to get on its feet. But as settlers start flooding in, there's this one massive question that hangs over everything. Who actually owns all this land?
And, well, the answer wasn't simple at all. What you had was a fundamental, head-on collision of interests. On one side, American settlers saw endless opportunity and wanted to expand. On the other, the American Indian tribes, who had called these lands home for generations, just wanted to protect what was theirs. This wasn't some small disagreement. It was two worlds crashing into each other.
Now, the Republic's first two presidents had wildly different ideas on how to solve this. First, you have Sam Houston. This is a man who had actually lived with the Cherokee. He believed in diplomacy and making peace. And then you have Mirabeau Lamar. He saw the tribes as an obstacle, plain and simple, something to be removed one way or another. These weren't just two politicians with different opinions. They were two completely opposite futures for Texas.
So let's start with Houston's approach. His personal history gave him this unique perspective that was pretty rare at the time. He didn't see war as the only option. For him, this was a problem you could solve with negotiation and, believe it or not, mutual respect.
Houston's plan wasn't just wishful thinking. He had a real framework. He wanted to make treaties to draw clear lines on a map, to actually define boundaries. He tried to reduce friction by talking things out, working with respected leaders he knew, like Cherokee Chief Bowles. He even went so far as to ask settlers to stay off Indian lands and used Texas soldiers to protect those rights.
But here's where it all fell apart. Houston puts in the work. He negotiates a major treaty to protect Cherokee lands in East Texas. It was supposed to be a cornerstone of peace. But the Texas Senate, they just said no. Driven by public demand for more land, they refused to ratify it. And that one act completely torpedoed Houston's efforts. It sent a devastating message. A promise from the Texas government might not be worth the paper it was written on. That failure, that broken promise, it opened the door for a radical change. Because when Mirabeau Lamar took office, the policy didn't just shift, it did a complete 180. Any idea of diplomacy was thrown out the window, and it was about to be replaced with a sword.
Lamar's view was, honestly, brutally straightforward. He just didn't see a place for American Indians in Texas. His official policy was clear: get them out or kill them. There was no negotiating. You leave Texas or you die. That was it.
And Lamar didn't waste a second. In July 1839, the militia moved in and attacked the main Cherokee village. During the battle, Chief Bowles, the very same man Houston had built a relationship with, was killed. Just days later, the Cherokee and their allies were forced out of Texas for good, leaving everything behind. It was swift, it was brutal, and in Lamar's eyes, it was a success.
But this policy of aggression led to an even darker moment. It set the stage for one of the most tragic and infamous events in Texas history: the Council House fight. This was a day that started with the promise of peace talks and ended in a horrifying massacre.
So here's the setup. It's March 1840. A group of Comanche leaders rides into San Antonio. The goal? To finally negotiate a peace treaty. And a key part of this deal was that they were supposed to bring back all the white captives they held. It really seemed like a breakthrough was possible.
On the surface, this looked good. Both sides were finally at the table, trying to end the fighting. But the entire meeting was built on a foundation of total miscommunication and distrust. So what was the fatal mistake? What went so horribly wrong that it turned a peace council into a bloodbath?
It all came down to the captives. See, the Texans were expecting every single white captive to be returned, right then and there. But when the Comanche chiefs arrived, they brought only one person with them: a 16-year-old girl named Matilda Lockhart. The sight of Matilda absolutely enraged the Texans. Her body was covered in bruises and sores, her nose horribly disfigured. And then she told them the devastating truth. There were 13 more captives, but the Comanche were holding them back, planning to release them one by one to get a better ransom for each. To the Texans, this wasn't negotiation anymore. This was blackmail. And just like that, the room exploded. The Texans demanded all the other captives be released immediately. The Comanche said they couldn't do that, so the Texans declared that the chiefs would be held hostage until the others were freed.
In the chaos, a chief tried to fight his way out, stabbing a soldier at the door, and in that instant, the soldiers opened fire. The fight spilled from that small room right out into the city plaza.
The aftermath was just horrific. The Comanche peace chiefs, men, women, children who came with them, were almost entirely wiped out, and the cycle of violence spun completely out of control. When word of the massacre got back to the Comanche camps, they retaliated in the most brutal way imaginable, by torturing their 13 remaining captives to death. Any chance for peace was gone, replaced only by a burning need for revenge on both sides. What becomes so clear is that these two presidents, Houston and Lamar, didn't just shape a few years of policy. They forged a legacy of violence and deep-seated mistrust that would scar the region for decades, all rooted in this absolute failure to find any kind of common ground.
When you boil it all down, the takeaway from this whole tragic story is pretty timeless, isn't it? It shows us that when different groups are competing for the same vital resources, and when agreements are broken, conflict becomes almost unavoidable. The only way out, then and now, is a real, genuine effort to understand where the other side is coming from.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. Just imagine, what if Houston's treaty had actually been approved? What if the expectations at the Council House had been clear and the promises honored? How might the history of Texas and the lives of thousands of people have been completely different if diplomacy had actually won out over war?